Okay, so the progress for tonight so far, in the last, been about an hour and a half, 2 hours since I made the first video. There's the gap and the separations that they had, and then here's the redone surface up to where I split it. Now the way I maintained this is I started at the top, and I would take out 3 or 4 rows, and then you stack it above in the same way, puzzle. Flatten it out, add your sand, level it, and then you add them all back in the exact same order. Then by eye, you lift any, put sand, and you got to use what's called a dead blow hammer. It's a plastic and it's full of sand. So when you hit a brick, it dead blows it and won't break it. So move 3 like a puzzle, scrape it down, put them in place, a little bit more sand than you'd think you would need, dead blow them all down level. Got all the way down to here. I had to then obviously pull up the old edging, and once you get it squared away, by the time I had started up here, by the time I got here, you're like this far away from the edging, because it migrates. So you're pulling up the edging, you're pressing it back in, and you're using the first rows that you had at a 90 degree against the surface to get your edge nice and straight. One of the problems he had is he was using the landscaping nails, which are okay, but when you use a landscaping nail, you want to nail it on both sides. There's a track on both sides, and that keeps it from shifting. He went down one side and he skipped. He only used 4 for this whole edge. On the outside, they're round. They migrate through the soil much easier with weight. I'm using, they're more expensive, nice big square flat ones. I'm bringing the edge in with the crowbar. I'm digging it down into the dirt, losing leverage, pulling the edge up against the rocks bricks that I already straightened, and then I'm toenailing this in a little bit, and then as I toenail it in, it'll straighten out, and I'm sinking them in here to then pull this edge back up level. So after I got all this squared away, you can see once you square it how much everything's shifted. We're that far from being able to put it together. So I'm done for the night, and what I've done is I used a bunch of these tees, and basically where I stopped, I made sure everything was squared up nice and tight, and then where my next line of bricks would go, I just put a line of those in. And now here's an example of what you're doing is when you're looking, after all, before I put the locking sand in, this is a big deviation. You're flush there, you're up here. So before you come in and pull this up, you're going to use sand. After you put some sand in, you're going to bring it in, and then you see the whole thing's raised. Oh, I get the dead blow hammer. And you knock it back down flush. Now, that's a set stone. When I get everything pinned, tomorrow I'll start back here, and I'll finish all that, and then once all the stone's in, I'll show you what the next step is. And the next step is this. Never seen that brand, but if you're ever going to take the time to put bricks in, never cheap out on the sand at the end, because what you're going to do is you're going to use a real stiff broom, and we're going to put what's called locking sand. This one, see, needs more sand. It's going to be raised. Getting late, and when you're tired, you mess up, so I'm going to be done. But I'll start here tomorrow. I'll start leveling. I'll keep going. And then what the sand does, it's got a polymer in it. And that's why it's called polymeric sand, which is a resin. And once you put the blocking sand in and use a real coarse broom, and you make sure you fill all the little nicks and crannies, you mist it down with a hose, and you let it sit, and you mist it down. And what that water is going to do is it's going to go in between the cracks like caulking, and it expands, and it's going to make a complete shell work of that. So whenever you do, what's up, stupid? Whenever you do brickwork, If you want it to stay and you want it to look pretty, this guy's major mistakes are he cheaped out putting in his edging, and if your edging won't hold your bricks, that's a huge problem. And the second thing is he cheaped out on his sand. He just used dirt. So basically this is all dug out and it was just pressed dirt, and I'm sure it looked good for 3, 4, 5 years. This repair with putting the proper sand and then proper locking sand and then actually putting these in place is more like a 25, 30 year repair. So you can go cheap, but at the end of the day, you're not going to save as much money long term, because 4 or 5 years down the road, you go cheap, you build it again because all the rocks are going to migrate on you. If you use the right tools the first time, and even if it costs you a third more, even 50% more, it's usually worth it in the long-term maintenance of a project like this. It's going to look pretty when it's done.